How's it going? Dave here, and in today's video I'm going to be giving you 10 different types of passing chords you can use in your chord progressions. Passing chords are basically chords that kind of go in between the main chords in your chord progression. They spice things up a little bit and make your chord progression sound really cool. So let's get started. The first type of passing chord is the diatonic passing chord. So we're just using chords within the key to pass between main chords of our chord progression. So for example, let's take the chords C, and everything's going to be in the key of C today just to keep things easy. So C, and I'm moving to F. So I could walk down from A minor down to F. So C, quickly hit A minor, then G, and then hit F. So. And maybe if I wanted to go from F to G, I could, after the F, play E minor, then F, then G. So let's try that. So that works quite nicely. Let's try it in a full chord progression: C, A minor, F, and G. And I'm going to be using this chord progression quite a lot today, so enjoy. So C to A minor. In between the C and A minor, we've got a B diminished chord which we can use. That's diatonic. So let's try throwing that between the C and the A minor. Cool. Then we're moving to F, so we could maybe go from A minor down to G, then to F. Then back to G again, so we could maybe play A minor to G. And then we're moving to C again, so we could maybe do D minor back to C. Something like that. So diatonic passing chords, don't pass up on those because they can be quite useful. I know they're not the spiciest sounding things in the world, but just because something isn't really advanced doesn't mean it sounds bad or anything. The second type of passing chord we're going to be using is slash chords, and we're taking that same concept of kind of like using diatonic chords or diatonic notes and walking down or up to the next chord, except we're keeping the chords the same and just changing the bass note. So let me show you what I mean. So say we're playing C and we want to move to F again. What I could do is take a note that's a step in the scale above or below F, which is our target chord, and place that in the bass of our C chord. So if I play C, I could play E or G, so I could play C with an E in the bass into F, or I could play C with a G in the bass into F. Let's try this with a chord progression. That's C, A minor, F, and G. So C, I can play C with a B in the bass, leading down to A. And then I could play maybe an A minor with a G in the bass, leading to F. And then with the G chord, I could have maybe an A going down to G, so I'll play an F with an A in the bass, and that A walks down to G, so we're in G, and to get back to C, D is a step away from C, so we can put D in the bass of our G chord, so and head back to our C, so all together. And obviously you don't have to use it for an entire chord progression, you can maybe just use it between two chords, just like every other passing chord here. Now we're going to take this a little bit further and do it a bit more chromatically now, and this is with line cliches. This is the third type of passing chord. Now a line cliche is when we have a chromatic upward or downward motion in one of the notes in our chord, and it's usually the root or the fifth. Doesn't really work with the third, but you can try it. So let's take, for example, C to F again. Now, what we can do is we can take the fifth, which is on the G string, and then what we can do is we can ascend chromatically, open, first fret, second fret, third fret, whilst maintaining the rest of our chord. So if we play our C chord, move the fifth up a semitone, we we get a C augmented chord. If we move the 5th up another semitone, we get a C6 chord. It's no longer the 5th. And then if we move it up one more semitone, we get a C7. And that leads very nicely into our F chord. So that sounds pretty cool. We could also do it with the root note of our chord. So I could go from C to A minor by descending the bass note of our C chord. So C moves down to B, moves down to B flat, and then moves down to A. We're playing an A minor 7 there. And it has a really cool effect. The 4th passing chord I'm going to show you is an augmented chord. So augmented chords are really cool to use after your 1 or 5 chords, and they lead really nicely back into chords 1, 4, and 6. So let's try that out. So first of all, we can use an augmented chord after we play our 1 chord. So if we turn our C into a C augmented, like we did in the previous passing chord, then we can either go to chord 1, which is C again, we can go back to chord 4, or we could go to chord 6, which is A minor. Okay, and the exact same thing goes for chord number 5 of your key. So C, for example, chord 1 to chord 4, now I'm playing chord 5, which is G. I could play an augmented chord, a G augmented chord that is, and then it leads back into chord 1, or it could lead nicely back into chord 4, or it could lead into chord 6, which is A minor. So augmented chords are really useful to use in that context. Now the next passing chord is the diminished chord, and the diminished chord works really nicely in between 2 chords that are a tone apart. So if we take the chord progression F, G, A minor, it's 4, 5, 6 in the key of C. Each one of those chords is a tone above the next, and if we chuck a diminished chord in between, we get a really nice chromatic movement in the bass. If we take the F, in between F and G is F sharp, so we play an F sharp diminished chord, and then we play G. In between G and A is a G sharp diminished, and then into A minor. So that's a really cool way of spicing up your chord progressions. So anytime there's 2 chords that are a tone apart, you can chuck a diminished chord in between them. Anytime you're about to go into a minor chord, you could chuck a diminished chord, a semitone below that as well. So if I was going from C to A minor, I could play a G sharp diminished before the A minor, like that. So that's another cool tip for you. Tip number 6 is secondary dominance. Now, I've done an entire video on secondary dominance. I've done videos on most of the things of the passing chords here, so I'll link them down in the description so you can dive deeper if they sound interesting or you want to know the theory behind them. But secondary dominants are basically the next chord we're going to, you play a dominant chord a 5th above that, and it has a cool dominant resolution effect. For example, if we're going from C to A minor, the 5th of A is E, so we play an E7 chord before we hit the A minor. Okay, so the next chord in our chord progression is going to be F. The 5th of F is C, so you play a C7 before you hit F. And then the next chord in our chord progression will be G, so the 5th of G is D, so we play a D7, and then hit our G. And then the 5th of C is G, so we could just turn the G into a G7 and play our C again. So it's turned a boring C, A minor, F, G. Turn that boring chord progression into something a bit more interesting. And don't forget, you can combine all these different passing chords together to create cool sounds. You don't just have to use one type of passing chord in a chord progression. So get experimental and start mixing these about. Now, if you don't know how to find the fifth of a particular chord, all you have to do is make like a power chord shape. So for example, power chord, 2 frets higher and a string down. If we want to find the fifth of G, that's going to be it. That's a D. So, you know, you'd play a D7 before you play your G chord. Quite an easy way of figuring out your fifth. The next passing chord adds a little bit extra to the secondary dominant. So this is the 2-5-1, and we're playing the 5, which is the dominant, but we're chucking a 2 before that. So if we're playing C to A minor again, we'll use that same chord progression, C to A minor. The 2 of A minor is a B diminished or a B half diminished chord. And then we play the 5, which is an E7, and then A minor. Okay? When we're going to a minor chord, the 2 is going to be a diminished chord and the 5 is going to be a dominant chord. When we're going to a major chord, the 2 is going to be a minor chord and the 5 is going to be a dominant chord. B diminished or B half diminished, E7, A minor. So now we want to go to F, and the 2 of F major would be G minor, and then the 5 would be C dominant 7. And then we hit our F. Then the next chord would be G. So before the G, we want to play an A minor, and then a D7, and then we hit our G, because A minor is the 2, D7 is the 5, and we hit our G. And then to get back to the C, our 2 is D minor, 5 is G, so we play G7, and then we play C. So. And obviously, again, you don't want to use it between every single chord in your chord progression. You want to use it sparingly so it has a stronger effect. But I was just showing you for the purpose of demonstration. We've talked about the 2-5-1. We can talk about tritone substitutions. This is the next type of passing chord. Now, tritone substitution is a very simple concept. All you do is take your secondary dominant chord, and instead of playing that dominant chord, you play the dominant chord that's a tritone above what your secondary dominant chord would be. So, for example, if I'm going from C to A minor again, the secondary dominant was E7, but a tritone above E is B flat, and you can play a 7th chord with B flat as the root note, so a B flat 7 instead of your E7, and it has a cool effect as well. So C, B flat 7, A minor. And a really cool hack for working out tritone substitutions is that it's just a dominant 7th chord, 1 fret higher than your next target chord. So for example, if I'm going to F, I just play an F sharp 7 before it, just a fret higher. Heading to G, I play a G sharp 7 or A flat 7 beforehand. Very, very simple trick, and creates a cool effect. That is tritone substitution. The next type of passing chord is the backdoor progression. So a backdoor dominant chord is a dominant chord that happens on the flat 7 of your target chord. So if I was heading to C, it would be B flat, because B flat is the flat 7 of C. And we play a B flat 7 and head back to C. But that's not the only chord we're gonna have in the progression, in the passing chord. You could just do that, but it sounds cooler if we do a 4-7 progression. So for example, if we're heading to C, we play the 4 of C, which is F, and we play that as a minor chord. I like the minor 9. And then we play the B flat 7. Now if we were headed to A minor, for example, we could play D minor, which is the 4 of A minor, then the flat 7, which is G, we could play that as a dominant 7th chord, and then into the A minor chord. So. Or if we were heading to F, we could play B flat minor, E flat 7, and then F major 7. So that's a really nice way of spicing things up as well, the backdoor progression. Highly recommend that. Our final type of passing chord for our chord progressions is the chromatic mediant passing. I'm not going to go too in depth with chromatic mediants because I've done a video, so I'll link it in the description. But basically all it is, the mediant means a third basically. So any chord that's a third above our tonic, so in the key of C, E would be our third. And if we go the other way, A would be the submediant because it's lower. And then all we have to do is alter one of those notes in our E chord or our A minor chord, and we get a chromatic mediant chord. So for example, I could play, if I was heading from C to F, again, classic example, then I could play, instead of an E minor, I could play an E major. That's a chromatic mediant, so C, E major, into F. Or if I was going from C to G, the submediant is A, but if I play an A flat major, then that would work nicely back into our G chord. So they have a chromatic mediant passing. I'm not going to go too much in detail with chromatic mediants because there's so many different options that you can use. You may as well just check out the video. So I hope those 10 passing chords were helpful. I hope they've given you inspiration and ideas for your own songwriting. That was the goal of this video. So if you did get some inspiration and you did enjoy the video, make sure you click like. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Hit that notification bell for more of this. And let me know what you thought in the comments. Do you have any passing chords that you like to use that I didn't mention in this video? I'd love to learn some new ideas if you've got any. And a lot of these passing chords I mentioned are talked about in my book, Chord Charisma. So if you want to get a free trial of Chord Charisma, I've got the first 2 chapters available in the description for free. That shows you how to write a diatonic chord progression with the 7 chords in our key, and then add extensions to those chords like 7th, 9th, 11th, and 13th. And I've got all the chord shapes for all of those chords as well, and where to use them. If that sounds interesting to you, again, absolutely free, down in the description. The first 2 chapters there for you. And I've got nothing else to say, so I'll see you in the next video.